The other piece is that identifying the projects is just one piece.
Yeah.
The real name of the game, the real sort of energy has to go into delivering that outcome.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done this front end very well, this becomes confused, and I see that consistently.
So, and when it gets to that point, what have you got to do?
Well, typically a lot of my work is what have we identified as projects?
Yeah.
Then what's the problem that's meant to be solving?
Okay.
And then working back through that.
So
process.
you get back upstream and rework the front end of it.
Prioritise those
Yeah.
based on what they look like compared to what they need to be.
Yeah.
And also on whether they're going to deliver that throughput, if they're in the right sort of spot, and then develop projects from those.
Yeah.
And then work with the teams of people within the organisation, in an interactive, collaborative way to identify the key issues, the key problems, and identify solutions and sustainably implement them.
Yeah. If you discussing the problem and putting the causes on the table, you could push this, and we could spend a lot of time talking about it. If you're going to give our listeners or viewers 3 key tips about how you treat this, how you approach it, a better way to resolve the real challenge, which is throughput and cost minimisation, what would you tell them?
It all starts again, it might sound like a broken record, but it all starts with the end-to-end approach, knowing what your business, where it starts, where your value chain starts, where it finishes, and what pops out of that end. If you know what pops out of that end and what that measure looks like, then you've got a starting point. So I think the first thing is to have a wholesale look at the business, and that's a senior leadership team responsibility. General managers and the like. They need to have skin in the game. So you need to be able to coordinate them in a collaborative way. That's number one.
So let me clarify. So if I'm hearing you, what I'm hearing is, don't bring an external company in to tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
Collaboratively look at your business from end to end and understand it and analyse it from a value stream perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, these guys, these people that work within that process deal with it every day. They just need a slightly different lens to look at that business.
Right.
Because they look at it daily.
Right.
You've just got to pull them out of that day sort of analysis and look at it slightly longer term. And once you do that, then they get this clarity of sight as to where the real challenges are.
Yeah. Isn't this more work for them? I mean, if you tell people, look, we're going to pull you, we're going to, in addition to what you're doing, we're going to go, look at this value stream, we're going to do this work about understanding it from end to end. They're going to go, oh, here we go again, I've got jobs to do.
George, like yourself, I've had management roles over the years, and I used to do the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out. A real issue. We've got to break the nexus. They spend a lot of time looking at, quite often, short cycle time stuff, day to day, week to week. And I'm not saying everyone does, but what we've got to be more proficient at doing is pulling and having a look at a more longer term approach, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, applying resources to dealing with those issues, and eventually performance will increase. It will increase rather dramatically because we're going to be hitting the right things. That in itself is going to give them more time because they're not going to have to look at the short cycle time stuff as frequently. I think that's a big important issue. The other thing is that I think because senior management teams often have this sort of like uneasiness about, is this going to give me the outcome that I need, and how do I tell the story if it doesn't? What they need is a level of confidence that whatever the process they're going to use is absolutely going to make an improvement.
And how do they get that?
And I think this is the process that I'm talking about. Is you have a look at the longer term, the longer value stream, over a longer term. Do, second point, effective analysis. You've really got to start to look at your business and use diagnostics that are different to the ones that we always use. Okay, we tend to fall into a pattern of using certain diagnostics, and they're okay, but they're far from, I think, adequate in today's modern society and modern challenges. So, doing very effective diagnostics is the second thing. Using some different techniques there, and then lastly, it's really all about making sure that you've got a very clear and identifiable piece of work that the project teams can actually go and deliver on.
Right.
And then all that goes with that. But just making sure that you summarise the investigation to such a way that then they've got an ability to do further analysis should that be required and deliver the outcomes.
I get a sense that what you're saying is kind of like that the level of confidence they have about the impact they're going to have on the business is raised significantly if they see it end to end. They know that what they're working on affects the performance end to end somehow, as opposed to reach as a benchmark for that metric. Absolutely. Which is a different thing completely, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like hitting a benchmark metric is one way of approaching it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it adds value to the business.
That's exactly.
It just says they hit a benchmark.
That's right.
Whereas what you're saying is the benchmark's not the goal, the throughput target is the goal. So what their level of confidence comes by making a difference where it matters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, let's be clear about this. I think all of these benchmarks over the years that have been developed, they were developed for a reason. I mean, clearly, if you haven't got a good, truck and shovel operation, that's going to affect the throughput at some point, potentially, if it is the constraint.
Yeah.
But if you've got a wash plant constraint that's bigger than the truck and shovel constraint, then it's the wash plant. But what happens is now, because we've got a functional lead in this role and one in this role, they still maintain those performance metrics that were developed some years ago. And as a senior leader, what you've got to be able to do, because resources are tight at depth nowadays, we don't have thousands and thousands of people running around doing stuff. We've got to be able to deploy them more effectively. So now we've got to say, look, listen, truck and shovel operator, can we just back off on this? And we might have to come to you next year. But at the moment, all hands on deck for this area here.
Because if you don't back off, you're just building up stockpile. Inventory or whatever.
Well, but also back off from a project management
gotcha.
activity point of view. Those people have to come here and help us solve this problem. For instance.
It's interesting, I can't remember who it was. It was a professor at a university said to me that if you look at organisations today that stand out, they're really significant in their impact on the world, but also their ability to generate profitability for whoever's involved as stakeholders. They don't run the benchmarks. They actually target specific metrics related to one thing, and that is going to be related to what it is they're doing as a business. They actually create the benchmark that all the other people try to follow, but because people are following those little things, they never probably ever catch up.
And look,
like Apple, the examples to me are the Apples of the world and those companies that are just blowing the rules out of the water.